joining us now for more on these developments and how they could affect AstraZeneca and the other vaccine makers. Jefferies Biotech analyst Michael Yee. Michael, great to have you with us. I don't know what to think about all of these disclosures of the potentially the CEO telling a small group of investors this information, the fact that the trial was also halted in July because a patient had other neurological symptoms, which ended up being multiple sclerosis. But we didn't know that the trial was halted at all back in July. How do you parse this out?
Well, I think you're right. And I think what we're learning now is that this trial and all of the COVID-19 vaccine trials are going to be the most scrutinized, the most carefully watched programs across probably anything in biotech and biopharma we've ever seen, because the stakes are so high. So I would say, number one, it's good to know that the safety oversight is extremely high. I think that's good for all of us to know. And number two, I think that it's important to know that clearly some of these companies have patient safety at the top of the list, and that they're watching over this to protect all of us. So I think that's good news. Why
do you think the stock recovered from a decline of 8% earlier in the session to finishing the day down 2%? Was it because of this disclosure that there was only one patient that had this illness and that's not yet been confirmed?
I think it's two parts. I think one is probably dissemination and commentary by the company that they were not overly concerned about the situation and that the first case was not a transverse myelitis. But I also think number two is that the broader biopharma community, and that includes my discussions with investors and other scientists and other people in the industry, that we believe it's difficult to confirm that the vaccine would be related to this. It is a benefit risk question, meaning maybe he had it already, maybe not. But also, of course, the vaccine is going to be a positive for you if it works. So ultimately, I believe that in a clinical trial setting, this is probably going to be continued on. They're going to resume it. That's my prediction. We're going to hear about that. And these vaccines are going to work. And so I think that this is a speed bump on the road here.
So Michael, it's Steve Grasso. Quick question for you. So the average person who doesn't understand this space the way you do, are they better off trying to pick a handful of these stocks, buying the IBB, which has biotech and pharma in it, or just buying individual names and being willing to take that risk of 20% to the upside and possibly 30% to the downside? Seems crazy to me. In the long run, will all of these companies have to share in the profits anyway, ultimately?
You bring up, I think, a short-term and a long-term question. What I would tell investors is there are big pharma companies with a lot less beta, a lot less risk that do have ongoing phase 3 trials or earlier. AstraZeneca, Sanofi, J&J, Pfizer, and I'll even tell you Merck has one of these that can be done in one injection, not two, and we'll see how that goes. And for those that want to play a trading view of it, look, Moderna has had a big pullback. BioNTech's had a pullback. I think we're going to hear from this data in the next month or two. I think it's going to read out positive. I think they go back up a bit. The longer term question will come back, and I think that's ultimately going to be the debate as to whether, what does it matter if more are coming, the price is going to go down, and we're going to go back to that debate.
All right. Michael, always good to get your thoughts. Thank you. Michael Yee.
Great to see you.
Tim Seymour, how do you think about this space? How do you think about the disclosures and then the company denial from AstraZeneca?
Well, it sounds to me like disclosure is really the issue, because it is customary to be pausing a trial and going through a series of steps to understand exactly what the safety issues are. And as we've heard, and I thought Ken Fraser said this really well on Scott's show at the halftime report, you can't rush science. And ultimately, I get the sense that these big pharma companies are doing their jobs. But the disclosure and how you get into, a Reg FD kind of a dynamic when you're on a conference call with investors who keep pressing is a very challenging place, although for an experienced CEO to be able to handle. Bottom line here is markets didn't act today as if this was news that was affecting their view of, our post-pandemic portfolio, really. I mean, ultimately, I think we've come to understand this process. And we've said this, Guy says this all the time. If you're expecting a vaccine in 2020 calendar year, I think you're on the wrong side of that trade.
But I think, the other question, and this is what Grasso is getting to, is that eventually if there are all these players with the vaccine in the pipeline, potentially everyone or many of them get to the finish line, Guy. is it really going to offer them any sort of, I don't know, boost to revenues in the end?
The PR obviously would be great. I don't think it's going to, believe it or not, I don't think it's going to necessarily move the needle in terms of what it means to them on the bottom line. But maybe I'm wrong. I think this is clear to me, though. If AstraZeneca was working on a shingles vaccine and this news had come out, nobody would have batted an eye. I think to the point is we are so hypersensitive now, and I think it's a cautionary tale for all these CEOs going forward to understand now their responsibility in this world and what they have to say and not say in terms of this moving towards the vaccine.